6 of the Julian Assange research document, another Group 4 Security Holdings UK Company Limited, registered to an address of Mazars linked to the World Trade Center disaster and Jeffrey Epstein. Another Group 4 Security with a director that was appointed before the World Trade Center disaster and resigned afterwards. We then have a Dutch company there, a telecom company. Moving on, the National Trust Enterprises Limited Company. And they are a fraudulent company. You can see that they were registered, they had an incorporation document of Sembrook, but that has never been registered. National Trust is the second biggest landowner, according to this article on the right, in England. This, of course, has huge implications because if these landowners are illegal fraudulent entity companies, that means they can't actually act as a landowner in that capacity. So that means huge implications in relation to land ownership and this system of fraud being identified. Then we have the UK Centre for Economic and Environmental Developments. And that is linked to an address of 1 America Square, which is already featured in the fraud. Linked through to Centrica PLC, already connected to the fraud. National Gas Transmission PLC. Let's look at that company. On the incorporation document, you can see they changed their name. On the left, first of all, in their registration, you can see they changed their name in 2023 in February as the fraud was being exposed. They hadn't changed their name since 2005. I suspect that's because of this fraud. And you can see that Slaughter and May is on their incorporation document, who is linked to the fraud. Back into the Canada United Council company, we have a link to the House of Commons via Robert Harris, and then to the Wildside Activity Centre. We also have a link to, again, a Citizens Advice Bureau company. And of course, you've only got to have one illegal entity company, and this gives the ability to move the laundered money from the tax contributions through these companies to an illegal entity company, and the banks are being allowed to falsify those companies' documents and send the real money into offshore accounts. This is very important. We now have a link to a United Nations Association of Great Britain and Northern Ireland company that was dissolved, and that was dissolved in, I haven't got the dissolved date actually, but it's a fraudulent illegal company. It's got Swift Incorporations Limited on the right there, you'll see on its incorporation document, and Jordans and Sons Limited on the left. Back into the Canada United Council company, you can see John Owen. Bearing in mind we've been talking about Owens and Porter, who has Stephen Owens and Matthew Owens as their directors, the owner of that company. I'm seeing the word Owing now throughout my research. Very likely relatives, potentially relatives of those individuals, bearing in mind that Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited is so heavily implicated in this. The director there is linked to a Welsh company and also the Learned Society of Wales. It's also linked to the Nuffield Trust for Research and Policy Studies in Health Services. The Nuffield company is linked to this international government fraud for another company. I've already found it. Commonwealth Company, Commonwealth Parliamentary Association United Kingdom branch. Okay, so huge relevant company. Linked to Westminster Hall, Houses of Parliament. Incorporated in December 2002, just over a year after the World Trade Center disaster. And you can see Allen and Overy on the incorporation document here. They are linked to the fraud. So every time you see a company, you know they're linked to the fraud because they've already been identified as having a fraudulent company or being linked to the fraud. That means they can move money through these accounts, as I've said, and defraud the public. This is an interesting one because you'll see that there's a director being crossed off on every page. It's the same director, and they are registered in Hampshire. No surprise, Andrew Pearson. I suspect they're worried, and they've said, please put a line through my name. So every other director is different except him, and they've crossed him off. Well, you can't cross through after a document has been finished and finalised and submitted. It becomes a forged bank document. Certainly if you're trying to hide the details, but they're not. That is more a case, I believe, of just put a line through my name. Here we have the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. So they have, therefore, the ability to provide misinformation, disinformation, to prevent this fraud being exposed through that broadcasting unit of the government. Then you have the Westminster Foundation for Democracy Limited. That's a joke, isn't it? There is no democracy with this system of fraud. Then you've got Canada United Kingdom, and they link through to, you've got Colin Shepherd, who links through to Friends of Commonwealth Foundation. Within there, this person, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, links to the Stakeholders Forum for Sustainable Future. And then within the Friends company that we were looking at, so the Friends of Commonwealth, you then have children and families across borders. This is very important. Remember, we're talking about international child trafficking. There's evidence and information from reports to suggest that children are being taken from international conflicts across borders into other countries and put into the child trafficking trade, whether it be for sex, adrenochrome, organ harvesting, slavery, etc. And here we are, we have children and families across borders linked to all of this. And we'll come on to some more stuff in a minute in relation to that. Here's that company, and it's got an address of Buckingham Palace Road. Going further on, back into the children company, we then have Liberty Living Liberty, in brackets CP Limited. Now, if you've seen my evidence in relation to Donald Trump, you'll see that Liberty Living companies are featured within that. You can see that this company is dissolving, and I would suggest that these are part of the Liberty Group companies. And if you've seen my evidential research document in relation to the World Trade Center disaster, you'll know that the group of Liberty companies is heavily linked to this. The National Council for Civil Liberties, for example, and they were linked to, affiliated to the Paedophile Information Exchange, which you can go and look at, and you can see an interview with Harriet Harman in relation to that. And that links through to, as I've said, a Paedophile Information Exchange, which is an openly paedophile organisation. And they've tried to hide the connection and the illegal link through to the World Trade Center disaster and Larry Silverstein via Westco Nominees Limited. So when you look at Westco Nominees, I do urge you to go and do it. Type in Westco Nominees Limited, go and look at the incorporation document, and they have removed the company name. Major fraud, major government fraud. So here we are, we have various Liberty Living companies. Then back into the children company, and they link to Anglo-Austrian Society, so Austria/English. We then have Santander Asset Finance PLC and Alliance and Leicester Commercial Finance Holdings PLC, all linked to this same director. And when you look at the address for Alliance and Leicester Commercial Finance Holdings PLC, you'll notice, hopefully if you've seen the rest of this document, Griffin's, Tavistock House South, Tavistock Square, London. And you can see it originally had, earlier had a name of Sovereign Holdings. Interesting, Sovereign Holding of Finances. But that address is relevant because it links to CAPB Limited. Here you can see their record, Griffin's, Tavistock House South, Tavistock Square, London. And on the bottom right, you can see that links to the Fleming family, who are part of my company, the company I was part of, Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited, where forged bank documents were required. And I refused to file those accounts using those documents. So one of the Fleming family called a meeting to remove me as a director, and they filed the accounts anyway. A complete criminal organisation against our government's own legislation. So everything now falls down because of what they've done. And they've been doing it for decades. Back into that children's company, we now have a link to International Claims Bureau Limited. Okay, so this will be to do with international insurance claims, I would think. And you can see they're also linked to Grant Thornton, which is linked to the fraud, and an address in Hampshire again. Director of that company, back into the children company, links to McClellan Group Limited. They'd already featured in the research of the fraud. And you can see an address here on the left of 32 London, Bridge Street, London. It's a very important address in the Shard, because that links from the World Trade Center document 2 that I've got with companies that are actually called the World Trade Center. And that links into the international child trafficking and to Madeleine McCann. And you can see that in that document in my videos. And importantly, this company dissolved in July 2024, even though it was incorporated in 1988. You know they realise the game's up, don't they? Obviously, as we're fully aware with all of this being exposed. You can see the previous name is Interserve on there that I've highlighted on the left. That's very important because Interserve links back to the Fleming family and a connection to Interserve company that was actually shutting down with billions of pounds going through it this year in 2024. So I suspect that's a huge part of the money laundering. On the right there, you can see the incorporation document for this company we're looking at. And Nigel Leonard Blood is on there, and the London Law Agency. That's Fraudulent Criminal Company. Nigel Leonard Blood links to the High Elm movement, which was a youth movement, and trying to assist with accommodation for the young. Yes, assisting them with accommodation. back in the late 1920s, early 1930s, I believe. And the Queen visited the location there for that. And there's an affiliation there and a connection through an interest in the royal family. And that links through into the child trafficking as well. On the left there, just to show the McClellan Group Limited, already linked in my previous research to the World Trade Center disaster. Back into the children's company, we can see Hampton Trust. You can see that's based in Southampton, again, which is where my company, or the company I'm part of, was based, and where one of the Fleming family was the chief executive for Hampshire, Isle of Wight and Dorset, in charge of a £700 million budget and 10,000 staff, and is linked massively to this international government fraud. And you can see the original name for this was the Hampton Trust, Hampshire and Isle of Wight. Well, they've removed Hampshire and Isle of Wight and changed it to Hampton Trust as I'm exposing the fraud. Look, you can see that. So they changed that name on 21st of June, on the bottom right there, 21st of June 2022, even though it had not had a name change since 1996. That was when it was first incorporated. Back into the Hampton company that we're looking at, we can see that you've got Rodney Hogg links to a company called the Friends of the Minister Church of St. Thomas, Newport, Isle of Wight. Now, I know that the all religions have been infiltrated by this, by the Freemasons, by the international trafficking and fraud that we're talking about. And here is another example of that. And it's obviously on the Isle of Wight, according to this, which is very relevant because that appears to be the hub of the child trafficking for the UK. Back into Hampton, we've got Ewan Davidson. And on the right, you can see now we now have links to the RNLI. So we've got RNLI, the Royal National Lifeboat Institute Enterprise, and then there's various RNLI companies you can see based in Poole in Dorset. This is right where Bournemouth is, near Bournemouth, and right near where the fraud started for me, where I acquired the forged bank documents for my company that I was part of. Loads of RNLI companies. You can see, I don't know if I've highlighted this. That name has been used, the address has been used, and we have Slaughter and May again. They're linked to the fraud. I haven't actually marked these. So RNLI College, it links through to them, and then you've got Sevenside, which then is also featuring in the fraud. Then you've got the Friends of RNLI UK Limited. So what they'll be doing is having the ability to launder money through the RNLI in relation to tax contributions. And here we can see you have Temple Secretarial Limited and Temple Direct linked to those companies as well. Little story, actually. This will explain why we had a police conference when I was working for Dorset. We went to a police conference in the RNLI buildings in Poole. It's interesting because the chief constable at the time, I believe it was Martin Underhill, was doing a speech. And one of the police officers, quite a high-ranking officer, fell asleep at the table. And the whole thing was stopped and the chief woke him up. So it was quite funny. Anyway, that explains why we were having it there, because they're all in this together. And obviously you've got the Freemasons running the whole lot. Complete criminal system, criminal organisation, 100% everybody. So now back into the children company, we have this person links to the Commonwealth Organisation for Social Work. Okay, now we know the social care system has been completely compromised by this fraud and the child trafficking. Lots of other people now presenting evidence of hiding information through the family courts. My evidence shows within the critical child protection document that even the head of the family courts is linked to the child trafficking and the international government fraud. Okay, the head of the family courts, that is. On the incorporation document for that company, we have Bates, Wells and Braithwaite's. That is linked to Keir Starmer and through to the Madeleine McCann case, which is all linked to all of this. We've also got in here International Federation of Social Workers now on this document. So that makes a link to the international, okay, let this sink in, International Federation of Social Workers, okay, based in Singapore. Okay, and you've got Prince of Wales Road again on there. You can see how this is all connecting, guys. British Association of Social Workers is also linked to the same director. The London Drug, Alcohol and Alcohol Network Limited and the Save the Children Fund. Now, I haven't gone into every single one of these companies to find further evidence because I'll just be here forever, as you can imagine. But I have highlighted specifically important things. And one of those things is the Save the Children Fund was recently being investigated there. But just have a look at the incorporation document. It's a fraudulent company. The Save the Children Fund, you can see the at the front, Save the Children Fund. But it's been registered as Save the Children Fund. There's no the in there at all. And on the bottom you have Waterloo and Sons Limited, which is significantly linked to the fraud and the Freemasons. And on the right there you can see a recent article. It says 2 days ago, but it was actually more like a week ago, maybe a bit more. And you have Save the Children offices raided in Guatemala. I thought that was an I. Guatemala. So this will be them knowing the exposure's coming, trying to make it look like they're trying to do something, unfortunately, I believe, to then allow us to, or make us try and buy into the Donald Trump and Putin digital currency system they're going to try and bring in. Unfortunately, guys, they're all part of it. On the left there, you can see, again, the Save the Children articles there, offices being raided. Now we're looking at John Shipton. John Shipton, if you remember, was on Julian Assange's dad. This is very, very important. And this will show you that there's no coincidence that I am in this position exposing this. Everything in my life has led to this point. My faith has compelled me every time. And this is a great example to show you that, well, you know, I believe God is real. There's no other explanation for me, a very insignificant person, being able to get all of this evidence, and these people need to realise that. So John Shipton researched this, which says that he was involved, he's linked to Julian Assange. I'll just read it to you. John Shipton, born circa 1944, is an Australian anti-war activist and architect, best known as the father of Julian Assange, who adopted the surname of his stepfather. He founded the WikiLeaks party and was involved with the creation of the website WikiLeaks and helped with WikiLeaks for years. He was criticised for meeting with President Bashir al-Assad during a visit to Syria as part of the WikiLeaks party. There's various other information you could look at and see if you want to. In May, I'll just read the last bit. May 2023, he said the campaign to free Assange was on the cusp of success after Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and opposition leader Pete Dutton, as Assange's detention had gone on too long. Now, John Shipton, according to articles, I haven't got it on here, has recently been invited, I think it was recently, by Vladimir Putin to the BRICS, BRICS discussion or talk. There's a word for it. It's gone out of my brain. It was all about BRICS, and that ties into what I've just talked about. So BRICS, according to the research, uses blockchain technology. It's a digital currency system. Blockchain technology is already linked to the international child trafficking. Go and look at my directed energy weapons concerns document and you will see blockchain technology. It's also featured in my one of my other documents linked to all of this. So it will not work. So here we are searching John Shipton. And there's one here with a slightly different date of birth. Okay, 1946 instead of 1944, it said. But it jumped out immediately. It's one of the first ones anyway, because we've got Wimborne, Dorset address on there. Now, one of the shareholders within my company, I've been led to believe, lives in Wimborne. So it jumped out. And here we are looking at that director, clicking on them, and you can see their name on the top right there. And they link to a company called Queen's Cops Management Limited. And they were appointed in February 2023 as I was reporting this fraud. So here he is, clicking on him. Here's Queen's Cops Management Limited on the right. You can see the address there, Elizabeth House, Unit 13, Fordingbridge Business Park, Ashford Road, Fordingbridge, England. That immediately jumped out at me because that is an address for, on the right there, you can see Napier Management Services. They were brought in by the other directors in my company as a proposed new management company after Owens and Porter. I was coerced into including companies from ARMA that we've already mentioned, the Association of Residential Management Association, I believe it is. Napier was part of that. This is that address. So we now have a link very directly to Export Manor Freehold Limited. And you can see he was appointed on the 1st of July 2024, this person that we're looking at from here. Okay, so on the incorporation document for that company, you have an address of Post Office Road in Bournemouth. They've used that address quite a lot. So moving on, going into that Queen's company, we have Christopher Charles James Batten. Now, I'm sorry, Chris. I know Chris very, very well because he is very closely connected to my wife's family and is either a financial advisor, or I believe he's a financial advisor in relation to estate and property and real estate. And he's to do with that. And as you can see, estate agent at the bottom. Going into that company, you can see that he resigned on the 19th of June 2023 as I was exposing the fraud. And of course, I had conversations with this man about all of this. And he basically said, it's a horrible situation. What can we do about it? And maybe the world just needs to implode and to cause a reset, a nuclear war or something like that. I mean, it was just unreal. So anyway, here's Chris resigning from that company. And you can see we've got an address to that company of 29 Southbourne Grove, Bournemouth. That is right near the block of flats that I was part of in my company, or part of the company I was part of to do with that block of flats. And that also links very closely to the people that gave me the information where this document all started. Okay, so we've gone almost a full loop showing very close connections now to all of it, and it's no coincidence. And that company has Brighton Secretaries Limited on it, and you can see on the right there that Brighton features in relation to the research of Connor Burns, who is the politician, one of the MPs for Dorset area. On the left there, you can also see that Brighton links to the case of Nicola Bulley, okay, who was found deceased. Now, the document's gone a little bit wrong here, so I do apologise. I think it's after I've converted it to a PDF, but we'll keep going. So you've also got linked to that person, Queen Elizabeth's School, Wimborne Minster. Here's Queen Elizabeth School. And it dissolved as I was reporting the fraud. Certainly making inquiries with my company in August 2022 there. And then when you go into that company, Fiona Holmes links to Initio Learning Trust, where I'd already seen that company before in my research, and that's because it links to Deborah Fleming, who is part of Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited. And you can see on the right there, here she is linked to Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited. So you can see how quickly that has now linked back from that research in relation to Julian Assange's dad to the company where this all started from me. And just to confirm on the left, here I am on Company's House, and you can see I was says I resigned. I didn't. I was removed from the company after Deborah Fleming called a meeting to remove me because I was refusing to file our accounts using forged bank documents. Okay, it's an international government conspiracy linked to the most heinous crimes against children ever imaginable. If we look into Queen Elizabeth School, we've got David Sims. If we go David Sims, he's connected to Bournemouth School. You go into that and you've got Paul Anthony Fitzpatrick. Sorry, I don't know where I got Anthony from. He then links through, sorry, that one was Bournemouth School for Girls. Fitzpatrick links to Bournemouth School itself. And David Sidwick is linked to that organisation, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Dorset. So he works alongside the Chief Constable for Dorset. He can hold them accountable. And the Home Office was insistent that they end up dealing with my investigation, even though I'd already made connections to David Sidwick and the international government fraud through Company's House. Okay, and now they're ignoring all evidence because they know they are stuffed. Absolutely stuffed. So, linked to Bournemouth School, we've also got Caroline Kellaway. And you can see here just on the right and below the multiple duplication of records that's been created by Company's House. Even though the information's all exactly the same, you can see February 53, same middle names here. It's all the same, but they've deliberately chosen to create multiple records. One of those links to the Masonic Hall, Branksome Masonic Hall. So we have the connection to the Freemasons. Now, this is very interesting. Remember, right back at the beginning of the document, and you can go and look at the whole document. It's there available to everyone. You had the internet company that Julian Assange worked for, according to the research, called Suburbia Public Access Network Limited. So we're now going to look at that. And this is a bit of research on the right. It says Suburbia is the largest and longest running free public access system in Australia. Has been running for over 20 years, has been a live internet system since 1993, before the internet was commercially viable. So it's one of the first internet providers in the world, and the largest in Australia. And Julian Assange worked for them. Now, this is very important because the depopulation situation that we are seeing, and even potentially an apocalyptic situation in relation to this radiation, appears to have been integrated, a weaponized system, into the mobile communication systems around the world. The research for that company also shows through Wikipedia that Mark Dorset is linked to. Remember, we mentioned Mark Dorset right at the beginning. But this is incredibly interesting. Now, we've mentioned Madeleine McCann a lot throughout this document. When you search that company directly into Companies House, so you put that exact company name in Companies House, it comes up with Bates Wells Number 2 Limited. And it had a previous company name of Hull Open Public Local Access Network. Well, Bates Wells Number 2 refers to Bates Wells and Braithwaite's. And you can see my previous research here in relation to Madeleine McCann. Here's Madeleine's fund, leaving no stone unturned. Her parents are linked to it. Here's Gerald McCann. Here's Kate McCann. Gerald McCann, by the way, was studying the effects on the eyes from radiation from Mars. Okay, that all ties in. And again, of course, you've got the Nicola Bulley case, where they were actually investigating, where they were creating a directed energy weapon around the time of her death through BAE Systems, who her husband worked for, and Thales, who the police that were investigating her death were linked to through Companies House, and international fraud throughout it. So here's Gerald and Kate McCann linked to that. And on here, just to confirm, you've got the same addresses on there, but you've also got Bates Wells and Braithwaite. Actually, you can't see it very well on here. Oh, here you go. You've got BW number 2, which is very similar to that. But it's just to show that it links very, very quickly to the Madeleine McCann case. So immediately when you type in this internet service provider that Julian Assange worked for, it immediately brings up Madeleine McCann links. Now, I can only assume that is because at some point there was a connection that they've deleted, but the algorithms within Google have enabled that to be brought up on there. I can't actually remember if that was a search. Yeah, that would be within Companies House, that is. So that's, again, links back to Madeleine McCann. Now we're looking at Mark Dorset. So when you type in Mark Dorset Companies House on Google, it brings up Mark Whiteley Dorset in brackets Limited. So we're going to look at that, and immediately you can see the address: 10 Prince of Wales Road, Dorchester, Dorset, United Kingdom. Going into that company on the incorporation, it has Barbara Cahan, who is linked to international government fraud, through an article. If you go and search Finchley Road fraud, you will see Barbara Cahan is mentioned, as well as 788 to 790 Road, which in London, Finchley Road in London, which features throughout the fraud. And Gordon Bowden, who had identified that connection to the fraud, I have information to suggest he was murdered from people that worked closely to him. He didn't quite get to the point of exposing what I've got to here with the forgery of the companies. So here we have Mark Whiteley Group Limited, and that's a fraudulent company. Swift Incorporations and Jordans on the right. From Mark Whiteley Limited, you go into Mark Whiteley Plant Hire. And there, we've already mentioned that a moment ago, 788 to 790 Finchley Road. You can go and look at that article, Ham and High article from 2019, that was. Okay, so now we're going to research Stella Assange. Remember, I had emails sending me the information from Julian Assange via someone else the day that, or around the day that Julian Assange was released. Okay, this is important. So we're now looking at Stella Assange, who is Julian Assange's wife, okay, who was his lawyer. And they married in 2022 in Belmarsh Prison as I was exposing the fraud. So searching Stella Assange Companies House on Google, it comes up with these two companies on the left. When you go into Stella Limited, the first one, and click on that, this is the first time. In fact, I think I've seen it twice out of 5,000 or so companies. There's no people tab at all. Normally you'd have a people tab here. There isn't one. That's almost unheard of. And of course, Companies House are supposed to be providing the information in relation to people connected to companies, to the public, and other information. So that is very important and significant, I would suggest. If you go into the other one that was on that list when we searched Companies House, Google, and typed in Stella Assange Companies House, you have Stella's Voice Limited. So we're going to look at Stella's Voice. And they have all of these previous company names that relate to hope and outreach and faith missionary. See all these different names? And in fact, the first two are the same, aren't they? Or have they changed one thing? You've only got to have a very slight difference in the register and it becomes unlawful and illegal. But it looks like it's the same. Anyway, that's very important. So what we're going to do is move on to the next part in part 6, I believe it is. God bless you all.